And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the ETBU Sports Moment, or Sports Broadcast. I'm Kenneth the K-Rock Klein, of course, as this is another edition of the ETBU Sportsnet Coaches Show. And we're joined by our head men's basketball coach, Brandon Curran, who surprisingly hasn't aged one bit after two hard-fought, thrilling games in the last weekend or so on the road, taking on Louisiana College and Belhaven. First and foremost, Coach, when you're going through those kind of games that kind of go down to the wire, does that kind of take a toll on you emotionally?
It is. It's a challenge. I was talking to Coach Rainbolt after both of those games this weekend, and really enjoy being with the guys and want to enjoy the games. But it's a different type of enjoyment because it's really hard. You know, that the atmosphere is hard and the ups and downs of the games are hard, and you don't have control. And so it's definitely a challenge. And after the game, you do feel emotionally worn out and physically worn out sometimes too. But it's a lot of fun. And obviously to be able to come away with 2 wins was really exciting.
Absolutely. And of course, being the fact that this was against ASC East competition, certainly a tough division to play in as well. I don't know if any of us should be really surprised by the fact that, you know, they're playing at their place. You expect them to bring their A game, and especially with how well you've been playing, knowing that you have a big target on your back. I mean, it doesn't really surprise you at all with what the efforts the other teams bring.
No, I thought both teams played really well. Louisiana College, any mistake we made defensively, they made us pay for it. They shot the ball really well. I thought they were very, very good defensively. Their guys were locked in. I thought they played a great game. And then Belhaven the same way. They hit 17 threes. They made it really, really hard on us. I thought both teams were really good, really prepared, and we were fortunate to get out of there with a win.
Absolutely, Coach. So now let's kind of break down some things that, you know, I feel like anybody that's an outsider that kind of follows ETBU but not really to the full extent should know. I feel like from an outsider's perspective, the first thing they might notice of an ETBU team is the fact that, well, this is a team that likes to shoot from the outside. They live and die by the three, so to speak, which I don't necessarily agree with that notion. But the three-point shooting obviously wasn't there, but you were able to find other ways to win. And, of course, probably one of the most underrated aspects of the game has been the play inside the paint. And obviously we saw that with Chris Haynes, of course, who dominated the paint as well, putting up like 25 points against LC and coming through with some big shots in the post. Like, that obviously has been a big asset for your game over the past couple of games as well. Just talk about the post play in particular of Chris Haynes.
Well, it's kind of evolved against our game against Wisconsin, Stevens Point. It's the last time we lost. They beat us by 2. And I thought we had a decided advantage inside, specifically with Chris and Jarrell and Ahmad and Bush, and we didn't take advantage of it. And Wisconsin, Stevens Point on the flip side did. I thought they played through the post really well. And so we really tried to add that as a third dimension right away, and credit to our guys. They've embraced it, and Chris is really good at it, and Jarrell is really good at it, and Ahmad has become really good at it, and Bush is really good at it. So every day you guys see the games, and we see the practices, and the practices that are wars. And it's been really exciting to see those guys step up and make plays. And you know, we've kind of got 3 layers to our offense. We can attack you just off dribble penetration, we can attack you with ball screens and dribble handoffs, and now we can attack you inside. And you mentioned it. I mean, our three-point shooting has always been really, really strong and still is. We shoot a high percentage from there. We've got a ton of guys that can all make shots. And so that opens things up for the bigs inside and free space for them. And when they get going, it opens up things for the guards on the perimeter. And so it's just a really nice combination to have, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And I think the guys are enjoying it.
Absolutely, Coach. And another thing that has been kind of a noticeable thing is there may be times during the game where things aren't necessarily going your way and the other team kind of starts to pull away and you're thinking, man, just another couple of baskets and they're in trouble. That might have been the case in last year maybe, but this year it seems like you're always still around and you always kind of have that expectation, okay, there's going to come a point where we're going to make a run, we're going to make this game interesting. It may be tight at the end of the game, but we're going to make that run. Does it kind of feel like the transition, especially given the fact that most of your players have gone through this before and have experience, does that kind of play into it?
Well, the most exciting thing about this weekend in the Belhaven game, we didn't play well the first half. And went down to the locker room, was getting ready to walk out. The team was in there. I hadn't talked to them yet, and I just heard them talking. And I heard a lot of different guys, not one guy, not 2 guys, but a lot of different guys talking about, hey, we need to fix this, or hey, that was my fault on these threes and this backdoor, or hey, if we do this, we can take advantage of this from them. And at that point, I just knew we were going to be okay. Like, genuinely, I didn't need to go in there and say anything because they were talking it out. They were figuring it out. They were engaged. And I talked to Robbie Dooley after the game, and he said, the biggest difference between this team and 2 years ago, that team talked and they communicated well like that at halftime in the locker room. And he said, but we were all young. We were all freshmen and sophomores, so we really didn't know what to expect. We really didn't know what we were doing. And he said, this team has grown up together. They've done things together, and they've won together, and they've also lost together. And he said the communication has just been really different, really special, and it's been a lot of fun. And so, I would rather be up in all of those games, but the bottom line is when we do get down, the other team is usually doing something, but we're also not doing something. We're getting undisciplined in our shot selection, in our defensive habits, in our box outs, and when we do that, we're not nearly as good. And so guys know what to correct. They know what we need to do, and it's been really fun to coach them and watch them take ownership of this team.
Absolutely. And, well, right now we're at the point where we kind of reached the tail end of the first half of the AFC East division, and then, of course, we're going to go right into reverse as well. But, it's crazy because usually when you've reached that end point, there's always another game. Like, that might be on a Saturday game as well, and then the next week you started. I kind of find it weird that we're having to play the same opposition twice, and not just any opposition, by the way. It just so happens that we're taking on our friendly neighbors, LeTourneau University, and, the fact of the matter is, while we were playing Belhaven, Louisiana College very close, they kind of put it on them, to say the least, and that's obviously they have one senior in Nate West, who, of course, has been the James Harden, Russell Westbrook, whichever comparison you want to go at it for the conference. But the difference between him and those two, he's got a really great supporting cast, and they're mostly just a bunch of young players as well. So, LeTourneau and ETBU, obviously, you look at the records, you can throw that out the window, you can throw anything else. It's definitely going to be a hyped-up game as well, considering that it feels like an NBA playoff situation where we play them at their place on Thursday, and then we come back and play them at our place on Saturday. So does that kind of bring a bit of a challenge, given the fact that, you've seen them in a year's past or so? Does that kind of possess a challenge of having to play them one game, refresh the next day, and then get ready for a Saturday game?
Well, playing LeTourneau this year is a challenge in and of itself. They're really good. You mentioned Nate West for them is an outstanding player, an All-American. But they're all good. Eberhardt can really shoot the ball. Justin Moore can really shoot it. And get to the rim. John Argue is a good player. Kyle Matthews is a good player. I mean, they're loaded, and they're playing really well right now. So just playing them is hard. Playing them in a back-to-back is just daunting. And so we know going in there, it's going to be a really hostile environment. It's going to be a great crowd. It's going to be a great atmosphere. We're honestly trying to block that out. And just focus on the things that we need to do to get better. We don't want to play to the crowd. We don't want to get involved in, this is LeTourneau. This is just a really good team that we have to prepare for. We've got to do what we do really well. We've got to know what they want to do coming in and try to prepare the best we can and play with the discipline that we know we can play with and give our very best effort. At the end of the night, we'll see what happens. And then we got to turn right back around and do it again on Saturday. Hopefully here we'll have a great crowd too. That'll be hostile and it'll be a lot of fun, and we'll get this place rocking.
They should just have it to where, like, you play your two halves, and then whatever the outcome of the score is. Like, let's say one team wins by 5 points. The other team would need to win by fewer than 5 points, like 4 or less. And then whoever holds on by scoring margin, you just give them the 2 wins as well. That's what I think they should do for a situation like this.
I don't know, you lost me on that one.
I was just thinking soccer. So, one final question, Coach. Mark was talking to Coach Henson about this, but you grew up in an era where your athletes might have been Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. I grew up in an era where it was like Michael Jordan as well. But obviously, we kind of were given a bit of a shocking blow with just how fragile life can be. And that, of course, with Kobe Bryant unfortunately passing away in a helicopter crash with his daughter and 700 members as well. I've saw some of your players tweeting out, the fact that they're still in shock and they just couldn't seem to believe it. And even 2 days later, it still feels that way. But when something like that kind of happens, especially to someone of an important magnitude, what does that kind of do as far as the mindset, just of everybody who grew up idolizing that player?
Yeah, so we met together as a team yesterday before practice to talk about practice coming up in Laterno. But first, we wanted to talk about what happened with the helicopter accident and just open up the floor for what that meant to our guys. And a few things were said. Number one, just how tragic it is and how sad it is, and not just because of Kobe Bryant and his daughter, but because there were other people on that plane as well, on that helicopter as well, and all of us created in the image of God have inherent value and worth, and no one more valuable than another, and so that the whole thing is just tragic. But our guys, in processing that, I thought had a lot of good things to say. One guy said, "Life is too short to have beef with anybody or bitterness towards anyone. Like it can be gone in a second. Like you have to let that go." Another guy said, just thinking about as a dad, like the moms and dads on that helicopter with their daughters, just how do they comfort them in that moment, knowing what's coming. Another guy said he never realized the influence, several guys said they never realized the influence that Kobe Bryant had on them as basketball players, meaning his work ethic was off the chart. And people talk about his workouts and what he would do. And my wife actually heard an interview with him yesterday where Kobe Bryant just said, I just wanted to make sure that the talents and gifts that I've been given, that I make the most of those that I can. And when you think about him and his career, I think that it looks like he did that. Another guy just made the comment that, in that moment, the only thing that matters is what's your relationship with Jesus. And are you with him? And you can take comfort in that. You can take hope in that. And that's what struck me when I heard the news on Sunday is those guys, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan in our day, Magic Johnson, they seem invincible, and I think we can feel like we're invincible, and we're just not. And you look at his physical stature, his size and his strength didn't matter in that moment. His fame, his wealth, the rings that he's won, in that moment, none of that matters. And it just, I think, frames your perspective of life and eternity. And, we here, faith-based program, we want our guys to grow in their relationship with Jesus. And you just pray that everybody on that helicopter knew him and had a relationship with him and is with him now. And so that was my big takeaway, is just that perspective of just how quick life can change, how fleeting it is, that it's a vapor, it's a mist, as Scripture says. And I'm praying that all of our men, all the men in our program, would give their life to Christ, that they would live in relationship with him, that in that moment that we're all going to taste death, that we would be with him. And we would taste physical death, but we would never experience spiritual death. And so that's the truth that we have hope in and that we hang on. And I hope that we're reminded of that through this, and I hope that a lot of people are reminded of that through this. And if people will come to know Christ through a tragedy like this, praise the Lord for the good that he brought out of it.
Absolutely. And of course, we're still praying as well. So, final question. We're just going to end it a little bit on a positive note here. So, big game coming up this Sunday. Are you going to be digging up some gold like a 49er, or are you going the route of trying to be a commander-in-chief?
We've got Jordan Gray on our team is family friends with Mahomes, and Caleb Ice, our director of operations, has season tickets to the Chiefs. And so by association, I feel like I know Mahomes. And so we are cheering for the Chiefs in our household.
Unfortunately, and I guess that's the route I'm going to be going as well. So hopefully the Chiefs win as well. All right, Coach. Well, big week for you this week as you take on Laterno in 2 games. Easily traveling games on Thursday and Saturday. You have your opportunity 7:30 on Thursday and 3 p.m. on Saturday, to say the least. That's going to do it for another edition of the ETBU Sportsnet Coaches Show. We'll be back with more on this YouTube channel.